was born a day early on the 9th of, no he wasn't, he was born on the 8th of March 2009. Absolutely fantastic. The big surprise was that he was a boy because we never knew what we were having, and we had 2 girls at the time, and then along came Jerry, and the whole thing was, so exciting, bring home the new boy and whatever. And fantastic time at home with the 3 of them, because they were all small as well. The 2 girls were small at the time. Lillian hadn't yet started school, and everything was hunky-dory, and health-wise and all of those things, Jerry would have been perfect, or so we thought, so the early days were fantastic. Looking back at them now and pictures of them, it's a bit strange because we didn't know then what we know now, but no, Jerry's birth, Jerry's early days were all absolutely, fantastic, and every day since then has been fantastic too. But there's this new layer has been kind of put on his story, We thought that Jerry was perfectly fine, and we had never noticed anything about him that was different. And I brought him to his regular 12-month checkup with the public health nurse that you bring all kids to. And at the end of that checkup, when he had ticked all the boxes, I just said, sort of tongue-in-cheek, to the public health nurse that he was taking his time with the crawling and the standing, and we joked that he was, a bit slower than his sisters at doing those things, and that's often the case. The nurse Anne then said to me, if nothing is happening with Jerry in another few months, we might look at that again. And that was an appointment then was made just in case with Professor Ray Barry at the Mercy Hospital. September came. I even considered not going to the appointment because at this stage he had started to crawl and stand, albeit months later than we had hoped. And went to Ray Barry. Dr. Barry checked him, seemed quite satisfied with what Jerry could do. Said, come back in 6 months' time, but while you're here, he said, we will just do a blood test to eliminate one particular thing that might be an issue. And the blood test was done. And the next day, I got a call to say, Dolores, can yourself and your husband come in? We've come up with something. So a bolt out of the blue wouldn't cover it. Absolutely no idea what was ahead of us. Went in, and then we were told that Jerry has a rare condition known as Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy. It's a rare muscle wasting disorder. It is genetic, which is a complicated thing to explain. It's got to do with your DNA and your genes. It is progressive. It is disabling eventually, and it's terminal. And the issue at the moment is it's incurable. So that's what our Jump for Jerry campaign is all about. And we were given, basically the facts, what Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy is, how it will affect Jerry, and how it will actually end his life. Mm-hmm. So it was a horror. It was a very, very profoundly shocking, disturbing horror film sort of scenario, in the early days. Things have improved for us since because we've got our heads around it, but at the time it was like being knocked over, like being knocked down by a truck. So yeah, knew nothing about Duchenne, and most people don't, and that's completely understandable because it's considered one of the rare genetic disorders that people mightn't have heard of before, When Jerry had his first checkup in the Mercy Hospital, the following day we got a call to ask us both to come in, myself and my husband Michael, to come in and have a chat because they felt they had come up with the reason why Jerry's crawling and walking was delayed. I remember actually when I said yes, of course we'll come in, I remember saying to Dr. Barry, I said, okay, it's about his walking. I said, will he walk? And he says, he said, absolutely. He said, he'll walk. But we never knew that obviously he'd only walk up to a certain point and then not be able to walk, which is down the line. But so went in, and I was very almost relaxed going in. I thought, okay, they found something. It'll be a manageable thing, like diabetes, or not that he'd have that, but he'd have a manageable condition that he could take medication for, get physio for. Michael told me later that he knew we were in trouble when we were both called in. I didn't. So I expected nothing, and what I got back was basically a life sentence for the child, and wasn't geared for that at all. So it was an immense shock. And we were sitting down, I remember distinctly, because we were expecting, or I was expecting our next baby, Billy. So I was sitting down a lot at that stage. It was 7 weeks before he was born. And we were told, look, we're sorry to give you this information. Your boy has Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy. And we were given the basic information. And what I thought what was very sensitive was we were given the information to take away and read as well, and then invited to come back in a few days later. So we left with, I still have it, we left with a 3-page photocopy stapled, and I always remember it as kind of almost like leaving the hospital with a cross, and that was that day. It was 7 weeks before our next baby was born, Billy, and the big concern actually at the time with the doctors in particular, and then with other people, was is she expecting a boy or a girl? But we didn't know because we didn't want to know. And if it's a boy she's having, there is a chance that he will also have Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy. I put that straight out of our head because we thought that's just for another day. It transpires, touch wood and touch everything else, that Billy doesn't have Duchenne. Just got on with the pregnancy and the birth. It was all hugely coloured by the diagnosis, and it was. But Billy came out laughing, and he's been laughing since. So he was absolutely, a gift, really. When he came along, he couldn't have come at a better time, actually. All those things, went on as normal, and the new baby and all the excitement. So there was, it was a bittersweet time, it really was. Great joy and profound sadness, all together. In the early days then as well, I remember looking at Jerry, I often say, with what I call Duchenne eyes, for the first 2 years were your worst nightmare, and I'd look at him and think every breath he took and step he took, I saw he's going to die, he won't be able to walk in another few years. That's faded because now we have got it down to an art, living for the present. He's here, he's moving around, he's living his life, and we would be thieving if we dwelled on the DMD that he has. So we're trying to shift the focus, but that's all since this fundraising campaign started, that we've become a bit more hopeful and positive and empowered, by him and by people who help him. Jerry needs to stay mobile. He needs to burn off the false energy that the steroids produce, which can be very hyper, he can be very hyper, and he needs to use his muscles as much as he can to maintain what he has. They have a fantastically happy life because their two sisters are just phenomenal. It's like having kind of resident Mary Poppins in the house with him and Billy. And a very full life. Spends a lot of time in the country when school is closed for holidays and stuff like that. And then physio then in the evening around 7:30 or 8 o'clock, just some basic exercise with Jerry. And then when Jerry goes to bed, he has to wear a cast on each leg. It's like you'd have for a broken leg, from toe up to his knee. Puts them on, off to sleep. Oh no, obviously 3 or 4 books have to be read before he goes to sleep. He's obsessed with stories. And that's him. I have never, and I said this before he was diagnosed, never met a happier person than Jerry Forrest, which makes it easy and also breaks our heart, because you think, my God, the joy that's there, is it going to be compromised and dented, But that's his day. Jerry doesn't know that there's an issue. He has said to me something like one day, "Mammy, I can't jump." And then I showed him that he does jump in his own way, and we did a bit of jumping around the kitchen together. Or last week I brought him to a place called Chucky's out near Wilton, and kids were throwing balls into a thing, and he said, "I can't do that." So he's beginning to cop that there are certain things he can't do, but absolutely doesn't know that there's a problem, So that's another future, that's the major one. Someday, we need to talk to him, Ready, steady, go!
The campaign to raise money from Jerry really, it started kind of almost, no, I won't say by accident, but not something that we put a lot of thought into planning. My brother-in-law George Bullman and my niece Carol Forrest ran marathons, one in Dublin and one in Newcastle, to raise money for Jolly. They just wanted to do something for him. Okay, and that was the first money that really was raised for Jolly, and that got us thinking about getting money for research for Jolly's condition and for other boys with a similar condition, of the same condition. And I suppose we were pretty private people, so we didn't want to do something big in public. It didn't really cross our minds. But Dolores, was in Lavana one day and she felt, we're going to have to do something about this. And who will I go to? Who will give us money for research for Jolly? And she wrote into the St. Angela's staff room, into the staff in St. Angela's, to see would they all contribute a £5 or something like that. And we'd gather some money, a few €100, and we'd send it off for research. And Sean O'Halloran, then the caretaker in St. Angela's, heard about this, and he's been involved in fundraising in the past, and he just invited us into the staff room one day to talk about it. And he said to us, would you not think of broadening this out and starting a campaign or a fundraising campaign or charity to raise money for Jolly's condition, for research into Jolly's condition? And we thought about it, we hummed and hawed it in the staff room, and we went home and said, yeah, this is something we have to do, and we just have to, sacrifice some of our privacy for this. And we said, what's our privacy? It's a boy we're talking about. So we thought about it then and said, yeah, we're going to do this. So Dolores came up with this name for the campaign, the Jump for Jolly. Now, the reasoning behind that was that because of his condition, he can't jump. Okay, he can take one foot off the ground basically. So that was also connected in with Jumping for Joy, because Jolly is a very joyful boy. So the composite name then became Jump for Jolly. So that's how it started, with St. Angela's and with Sean O'Halloran. Okay, and Sean then, his big first fundraiser really was his Camino walk. And Sean raised a lot of money through sponsorship for that. You name it, it's been done. Coffee mornings, backpacks, skydives, running marathons, cycle marathons, clothes collections, bazaars. So that would have raised roughly 100,000 in 2 years. So I suppose we are kind of hard on ourselves. We looked to raise 250,000 in 2 years, which was a nuts target. But we said we might as well. Nice round figure. But we're almost halfway there in 2 years. So I suppose we're very, very happy with that, and happy with the support that people have given us. Because all of these events, they haven't been run by us. It's other people who've come to us and said, we want to do such and such for you. And, we're happy to go with that. All the money that we raise goes for research. That's very important for us to emphasise. What we do at the moment is we collect maybe 10,000, whatever, and once we have that together, we send that to MDI in Dublin. They have a fundraising committee where they research projects that would be suitable for Jolly, specifically for his condition. Okay, and then once they've a project identified, they send it to that project. Now, what they've identified as a relevant project for Jolly is being conducted on muscular dystrophy in Oxford. So all the money goes to a university in Oxford for research into his condition. These treatments, 5 years is nothing. Okay, but 5 years is an awful lot to Jolly, because in 5 years he'll be 11. Okay, so we're just hoping that there is something there that will get to him on time. Jolly is a person.
That's an easy one.
Yeah, he's a bit, I suppose, he's left of centre, Jolly is, That's how I describe Jolly. He's very, very, I suppose, lovable, He's not, I don't think he's your kind of standard rogue of a boy, He's very, very funny, and he's very, very affectionate. But how would I put it? He loves affection. He loves everybody in the house. But he's different to boys. A lot of boys that I know of his age, and he's different to his siblings in many respects as well. Now, whether that's part of his condition or just part of his personality, I don't know. Yeah. Dolores might have a different opinion of him than I do. I'll come in, he mightn't say hello to me at all. Then 20 minutes later, he might crash into me with his head, which I suppose is pretty normal for boys. As a person, he loves food. I don't know, is that his person? I suppose it's part and parcel of his makeup. And I suppose he loves being together with us, and you see them there playing, and it's just, they're so united, you know. It really is beautiful to see it. I'm sure it's the same in many, many houses. And of course, he's very, very handsome, you know.
Jerry's diagnosis affects everybody in the house. Maybe least of all him at the moment, and least of all his younger brother Billy, because they don't know. And they shouldn't know because they're small. But Jerry's two sisters, Lillian, who's 10, and Elsa, who is 8, they're very cognizant of the fact that Jerry has Duchenne. They, as I said, they know the basic facts around it. They know it's not good. They know that it's not good in the present tense for him. And just last night I was just looking through Elsa's homework. Elsa is 8, and she had to do as a little homework piece, if I had 4 wishes. And just before I read it, I remember thinking, she might wish for a particular toy or a trip to Disneyland or something. And the very first wish was, my first wish would be that little Jerry would not have Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy and that he was not sick. And then the other ones were, you know, a bit more, I suppose, normal. And it went through me because I realised this is in her heart, this is in her head. Thankfully not in the same way it's in mine every waking moment, but it's the backdrop to her life and to Lillian's life and eventually to the 2 boys. So, you know, it informs so much of what we are as a family, and it colours it. But I thought the beauty in that, you know, I just thought, yeah, she adores him. And it just reminded me of all the goodness that is there around all of this, the love, the empathy, and the kind of positive energy that's around it, you know. So it's kind of bittersweet, the whole thing, you know, the family in this Duchenne story with Jerry, you know.
We know that Jerry is different, okay, because of his condition he's different, but we try and treat him the same as we treat our other children, and try and involve him and include him in the way that we involve and include our other children. Life is a little bit different for Jerry, but we try and keep it the same for him. Now that won't always, he will know eventually that I'm different, and you know, we know that that's difficult. It must be difficult, okay. And I suppose we know that it's different for our other children too. I mean, they've expressed, like, you know, Jerry doesn't have to do this, or he gets away with that, and that can be hard sometimes, you know, because it can't be the same for him. What we don't know about, I suppose, Jerry's situation really is how it's all going to pan out. I said we do know, but at the same time, you know, we don't know exactly and what it's going to be like, okay, to look after Jerry. I mean, that's really something that you don't know, and I suppose maybe you try not to know how this is going to pan out and how this is going to end, you know, because you put all the scenarios through your head, you know. I've seen the house altered in my mind. I've seen him in bed being nursed in my mind, you know, and that's tough.
What is in store for Jerry is very well documented, and I often kind of describe it as a kind of a sci-fi scenario, because while nobody knows what's in store for them and for their future, and in particular for their last or final days, we know the end of Jerry's story. We did know the end of Jerry's story before his story was even beginning, you know. And how it pans out in its classic and its textbook is that the boy, because it only affects boys actually, the boy who has Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy will manage okay with steroids from the age of 5 or 6, will manage to, you know, stay mobile and stay verbal and all of those things until about the age of 8 or 9, give or take. And at that point, mobility, walking wise, obviously, it would be the big thing, will deteriorate because the muscles begin then to waste away. And Jerry and his peers who have muscular or who have Duchenne muscular dystrophy very often are wheelchair bound by about the age of 9 or 10. There have been the odd exception that would maybe get away with 11 or 12, but 9 or 10 is kind of the age we're given. Then, so that's primary school, and then when Jerry goes into secondary school, obviously wheelchair bound for the rest of his days. Other things kick in, because obviously while you think muscles, oh yeah, arms and legs and mobility, you're also talking obviously about heart and lungs, because they are muscles. Those problems kick in the boys' teens, and so breathing will be compromised, digestion, swallowing, speaking, heartbeat. And then if and when Jerry gets through secondary school and into his 20s, that's where you're in big trouble. Jerry will more than likely be housebound. He will of course be wheelchair bound. We'll be talking about eventually 24-hour care, and then he goes. It is all about the love, you know, that he gives, he gets, we give, we get, and other people give, you know. So yeah, the future's it's very stark, it's well documented, there's no getting away from it unless the researchers come up with something and they're at it hammer and tongs. And we know that if research doesn't progress to a stage where a treatment or a cure is found for Duchenne in time for Jerry and other boys, we know that he will die from this condition. And we don't know when he'll go, and we don't know what we'll do when he's gone. Will we do If I Knew You Were Coming, I'd have baked a cake, but do a tickle at the end? Now, are you ready for this, Elsie? You know this one, right? No tickle. We just do the ordinary one. Now, we also have to sing a song. We won't bore you with why we have to do that. But anyway, now we're ready, so lads. Will we sing it? If I knew you were coming, I'd have baked a cake.
Dad can
Baked a
sing
cake.
it.
Dan can. Dan, I'm teaching Dan the song. Baked a cake. If I knew you were coming, I'd have baked a cake. The best cake in the land.
Daddy don't know it.
I'm going to do your other leg now for the next bit. Watch this part now. This is the funny part about the bang. Right, you ready? Leg down for Mammy. Wait for this now. Wait till Dan sees this will be skitting, right? Leg down, Jar. If I knew you were coming, I'd have hired a band. Hired a band. Hired a band. If I knew you were coming, I'd have hired a band. Do it with Bert now as the best band in the land. And now we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the fish. Right, ready? Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once I caught a fish alive. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then I.
Go right there.
Why did you?
Go.
Because he.
Because he goes so.
Which finger?
Did he bite?
The little
Finger on
on
the
the
right.
right.